Maegan, you're the podcasting expert here.
I know, yeah. Although I was just calling Brian and I said that you have a podcast with like 8 different people.
What are you talking about?
You have one with Emily McPhee.
Uh-huh.
Don't you have more?
There's one person.
Okay, well, you always talk about doing one with David Lynn.
Oh, yeah, that's not going to happen.
It's not?
No,
Why?
because I don't have time to do another podcast besides these two. But anyway, maybe we should tell people what this podcast is. Do you remember the name, Maegan?
Oh, yeah, Self-Help Hangover.
The Self-Help Hangover Podcast.
Yeah.
Well, why are we calling it that?
Because, are we recording? Oh, yeah. We're recording. I didn't realize we started.
Yeah, yep.
Dad wanted to record all of the setting up and checking the stuff.
Oh, he did?
We wanted to hear you talk about your pull-ups. And
Okay, sweet. So why are we calling it that? So, from my understanding, when you have a self-help hangover, it's when you listen to too many self-help books, and it's almost like an overload of information. Is that your definition?
I think that's a good definition. I think for me personally, I grew up in a family that had, I would say that we had 3 religions growing up in the house I grew up in. One of them was music. So we all took music lessons, right? And so we had to practice our instruments and that was just like foundational. So every day before school, we practice our instruments. The second religion was an actual religion. So we read the scriptures every day before we went to school as well. But I would say that the third religion that we had in our house growing up was multi-level marketing. Okay, so multi-level marketing was a big part of our family culture in the family that I grew up in. And so a bit of the hangover for me comes from that. It comes from all of the stuff, all of the instruction and like, self-help stuff that came along with that culture of multi-level marketing.
Yeah.
So that's why I want to talk about it.
Okay.
It's partly like therapy for me.
Okay. Should I tell everybody about my childhood?
Sure, yeah. Tell us about your childhood.
So, I grew up in a Mormon family, and and my parents were. I'm the oldest of 4 kids. My parents were. Let's see. I think we had 2 religions growing up: music and Mormonism. Anyways, so. My parents were very Mormon, and I'd say
very. I don't want to correct you too much, Maegan, but very, really, very.
Yeah. My mother, who is
you love,
who is an angel on earth. She was very Mormon growing up, but. I think I was like 18 when I stopped practicing Mormonism, and I have not been practicing it, so.
Okay, so we're coming at this idea of, what we want to do in the podcast is review some of probably the most famous or most, I don't know, salient self-help
Gurus.
books or gurus or ideas surrounding how to, like the metaphysics of success.
Yeah.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm coming at it from a perspective of a somewhat religious person who is also probably more skeptical than you are, right?
Well, I am skeptical, but my dad is like extremely skeptical of gurus.
Well, okay, so I'll just, what's the word? For clarity? No, for transparency. I'll tell you that one of my favorite podcasts is Decoding the Gurus. And so they kind of pick apart the logistic or the logical fallacies and things of contemporary gurus and
Yeah.
the guru sphere.
But my dad also like when you like quote a guru or talk about a guru, he thinks that you're like obsessed with this guru, that you're like paying money to them or something. Like every time we like send a video or something in our group chat about like a guru, quote unquote, he'll send like a Wikipedia page of all these controversial things about that guru.
Is that true?
Yeah.
Okay, well, that's good to get your perspective. So, yeah, so the why, I think, why are we doing this podcast? I think one of the reasons we want to do it is, well, I want to do it to hang out with you. I think these are topics that we're both interested in.
Yeah.
And we both talked also about improving our ability to podcast.
That's true.
Just our communication, getting rid of filler words and being more, speaking more clearly and things like that. So maybe if we keep doing this,
Hopefully.
we'll see some improvement.
I know, yeah.
We'll see how it goes.
Yeah, so hopefully there will be a big difference.
Also, we have a jolly lad in this room with us.
We should actually have a third microphone for him.
Okay, so Brian is here. He is our engineer. And so another reason we're doing this is because we want to hang out with Brian. We want to hire him to do some audio recording.
Davos Music.
That's right. Check out his music at Davos. Brian's raising his fist in a cheering way. Anyway, another thing that I want to do with this podcast is just to kind of go back to my roots, to let you know where I'm coming from, but also to remind myself, because a lot of the ideas of the success ideas, they really did get me started on this path that I've been on, my career path. And so I want to confront my own cynicism as a middle-aged man. So that's another reason I want to do it.
Yeah.
Do you have anything to say about that? You look like you had a thought.
I just think it's funny to explain why I wanted to do this, because my dad just texted my group chat and he was like, I have this brilliant idea for a podcast. And here we are. That was like a week ago.
Yeah. Yeah, we're going to talk about those flashes of inspiration.
Yeah.
which actually Napoleon Hill talks about in the
Yeah.
book that we're going to... Have we talked about the book that we're going to review?
I don't think we have.
Okay, so what we want to... Oh, go ahead,
Oh,
Maegan.
I was going to say, so our first book that we're doing is Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill. And we're thinking of doing it like one episode per chapter. And we'll see how that goes.
Yeah. Yeah. So another reason that I want to do this podcast is to work through kind of the logic of some of these ideas with you, my daughter, who is at the beginning of your career.
Yeah.
Right? You're just about to graduate with a degree in exercise science. Mm-hmm. And will, maybe start working full time.
Yeah.
This year. And we are in Utah, right? Which is sometimes known as the affinity fraud capital of the country.
Really? Does that mean
I
like
don't have any,
multi-level marketing
no.
or
So I don't actually have numbers on that, or I don't have the data in front of me to back that up. But affinity fraud is basically people taking advantage of their relationship with you,
oh,
right?
yeah,
So maybe it's somebody at church, or
or
some.
someone because it's such a tight-knit
It's a tight knit
community.
community that's very trusting,
Yeah.
right? And so it's easy for people to get swept up in a program, or some.
Or pay for something that's maybe
Yeah.
not the best thing to pay for.
Exactly. Exactly. Okay, so then, I mean, there are other larger questions that we could address. For example, is life logical? Like, can we use logic to escape being taken advantage of, or can we use logic to find success? Or, does intuition kind of play into that as well?
Yeah.
And then, what legal and or ethical boundaries does it make sense to have around what people can do to make money?
Okay.
You know,
Yeah.
and that might even delve into the political ideas. And then lastly, and probably the overarching thing, is what is good about this book and other books that we might be reading, and what are the pitfalls of self-help culture?
Yeah.
What do you think?
I think those are great things to think about. So should we start with the introduction?
Yeah, but before we get there, I want to talk to our audience here about what are our qualifications? Are we qualified
Me
to
and
have this
you,
conversation?
are we qualified to have this conversation? I I'm trying to think what kind of qualifications would would make you qualified. What qualifications do those guys have who do the Guru podcast?
Oh, they're both professors. I can't remember exactly. One is an anthropologist, I think, and the other is, I can't remember.
So maybe just take our opinions with a grain of salt.
Yes. Take our opinions with a giant handful of salt. Just pour salt out of the shaker into your cupped hand
Yeah.
while you're listening to this podcast. But you are into health and fitness.
Yeah.
And there's a whole kind of self-help
Aspect of that.
community. And yeah, what have you seen?
So yeah, I mean, with my health and fitness, I have been a personal trainer for over 5 years now, and I've done yoga instructing for 2 years. And then, yeah, I'm in my last semester of my exercise science degree, and I think there's definitely a lot of scammy stuff in the health and fitness world. I don't want to get too controversial, but a lot of people...
Yeah, don't get us sued right
I
from
know.
the outset.
I mean,
we haven't even gotten this started
I feel
yet.
like a lot of people are pretty open about this, but just with I think a lot of your this might be totally off topic, but there is a lot of scamming, and a lot of influencers are on steroids or on Ozempic or something. So it's just hard. You have to be careful what advice you're taking and with buying stuff, because a lot of people are using.
But not the Liver King, right?
Yeah.
The Liver King, he's just...
Never.
He didn't take steroids.
No. Everybody and their dog is on steroids. Seriously.
No wonder the dogs are looking so built these days.
No, but seriously, if you see, I promise you, most people on the internet who are doing health and fitness are on steroids, men and women. So that's just an interesting thing to think about when you're taking someone's advice.
Okay. So, and you're about to finish your exercise science degree, like we said.
Yeah.
Now, I am an artist. I've built a small business around making art. I'm not a multi-millionaire or anything, But I've been doing it for 25 years. And arts can be a hard thing to make a living in, you know.
Yeah.
When I was planning on doing art as a career, when I was choosing it as my major, people started freaking out around me. You know, people that I knew warned me against going into that. And honestly, this book that we're going to discuss, Think and Grow Rich, helped me have confidence, you know,
Wow.
moving forward as an artist. And so, like I say, over the last two and a half decades, I've built a small business enough to support a family, and hopefully it's just the beginning, you know, for us as I continue to make art, hopefully well into my old age.
Yeah.
Our income will continue to expand. So definitely, I feel like it has involved thinking about an idea and then turning that idea into reality.
Yeah.
Right? And that's
definitely.
kind of what this book is about.
Yeah, I think that's the overarching theme of this book.
So what we want to do today is just look at the introduction. If I get too snarky or cynical, you'll rein me in, right, Megan?
I'll take him down a notch.
I want to just think about what I still think is legitimate. You know, what ideas from this book are helpful.
Yeah.
While also pointing out, now here's something that kind of, what's the word?
Rubbed you the wrong way.
Something that really shook me up, right?
Yeah.
I had based so much of my ideas about success on this book, and then it wasn't that long ago that I found out that, you know, maybe Napoleon Hill was kind of a shifty guy.
Yeah.
Right? Like if you look up his Wikipedia, and some people may scoff at that and say, well, what does Wikipedia know? But there's a lot of footnotes in the Wikipedia article that talk about what historians think about Napoleon Hill, right?
Yeah.
That he has like basically scam after scam after scam, right, in his history. And maybe he didn't think of them that way. Maybe he thought of them as legitimate attempts to create something. But regardless, that is definitely something to take into account while we're reading this book.
For sure.
Before we get into the intro, is there anything you want to say about it?
So while we're filming this, recording this, we have only read through the first 4 chapters. I'll save my thoughts for each chapter.
Okay.
So you can go ahead.
Okay. All right. So I highlight a bunch of things in this book, and I'm just going to go at it from the first page. So the first page, I think, is probably written by, I'm not sure who wrote the first page, but it says that the things described in this book offer the shortest dependable philosophy. And I just want to ask the question, how could you possibly claim that?
Yeah.
That this is the shortest dependable philosophy?
Referring to the book as a whole.
Yeah.
And it's the shortest philosophy to gaining riches.
Of individual achievement.
Huh. Interesting.
I mean, that's pretty hyperbolic, right?
Yeah, that's a pretty big claim.
And then they go on to tell you how to study this. A real student will not merely read this book, but a real student will meet in a study club, which is what we're doing.
Wow.
So we're on the right track already.
We are.
And the reading at the club should be done by someone who reads well and understands how to put color and feeling into the lines. Do either of us qualify?
I think that I think if we try to, we can.
Okay. Okay, so then it moves on to some tributes to the author from great American leaders. And I have to admit that some of these are fairly impressive. There's one by Woolworth, by, Wrigley, just some really big names. I think that says Howard Taft.
And these are, sorry, so are these stories of achievement, or are these reviews of the book by these people?
Well, that's the thing, because a lot of times he in the book, he says, I studied 500 successful men and put this all together. And Andrew Carnegie asked me to put this book together. I met him and he said, I will introduce you to all of these successful men and will you put this book together?
Yeah.
But historians are debating whether or not
he even
ever had a meeting with Carnegie.
Wow.
So definitely when you say Carnegie said this, Carnegie put me on this path.
You have to wonder if it's really true.
And also what kind of, it lends so much credibility. Right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Now, if we, again, on Wikipedia, you can read, there's a little thing that says that the documentation, a lot of the documents that prove that Napoleon Hill met with all of these successful people was burned in the Chicago fire.
No way. Oh my gosh.
So I don't know. Okay, so but some of these, listen to this, and you tell me what you think. May I not congratulate you on your persistence? Any man who devotes that much time must of necessity make discoveries of great value to others. And then he says, I'm deeply impressed by how you use the mastermind. But this is from Woodrow Wilson. I just think if you read some of these, it's like, this guy's bugging me for a book blurb. This is what I can bring myself to say about it. That's kind of how the vibe that I get out of that.
Okay.
Is that too cynical?
So that was Woodrow Wilson, and he said, sorry,
you sure are persistent.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay, interesting.
Anybody that spent as much time as you have has to discover something good.
Yeah.
So I don't know. Is that too cynical for you?
I don't think so. I could definitely read it that way.
Okay, but William Wrigley says, whatever success I may have attained, I owe entirely to the application of your 17 fundamental principles of the law of success. So a lot of people have read this book. I read it. It meant a lot to me. A lot of people that I love in my family think of it, I would say, as, like I say, as scripture.
Yeah. Well, I remember I read this like forever ago, and I remember really liking it. And then my dad told me years later about kind of Napoleon Hill, with him being a little bit scammy, and that it's allegedly he never even knew Andrew Carnegie or met with him. And that was kind of like a similar kind of a bummer to find out.
Yeah. Yeah, and like I said, we don't know. We don't actually know whether or not he actually met with Andrew Carnegie, but historians have raised that question, and there's a long history of his business dealings and things that he said that makes wondering a legitimate concern.
Yeah.
Right? Okay, in the publisher's preface, again, this is not Napoleon Hill, so we can cut Napoleon Hill some slack here, but the publisher is full of hyperbole. The publisher says, here you have the entire philosophy of money making. Right here in this book. The entire philosophy.
Wow.
Complete instructions. It provides you with a perfect system.
That is a lot of confidence.
It is. Now, I gotta say, I have an art school, and I had a successful artist come and teach a workshop to my students. And just like a couple weekends ago. And she gave kind of a pep talk to my art students. and said that she promised them that if they took themselves seriously, that if they put the time in, they believed in what they were doing, that it would pay off many times over
Yeah.
in the long run. Now, I actually felt really good about that. I felt like I needed that pep talk.
Yeah. Yeah.
And at the same time, I don't give that kind of pep talk to my art students because I don't want to make any guarantees.
I feel the same way. I feel uncomfortable promising anything just because, I mean, yeah, it's hard to say definitely like, oh, this is 100% the best information. This is the only way to do health and fitness, blah, blah, blah. But yeah, so I'm not confident enough to make promises.
So is there a way to build up your clients
Yeah.
without promising them results that, they may or may not be able to attain?
It's so hard because a lot of people, well, there's so much complications in health and fitness, and there's so many factors that go into it, and a big one is something that people are not willing to work on, which is nutrition. Mm-hmm. Which is one of the biggest, I think, roadblocks with my clients, because it's very hard when you exercise. It is so good for you and has so many benefits, but it's hard to get the exact physical aesthetic results you want without altering your nutrition. So that is something I find really hard as a coach. But I mean, I'm trying to think how I motivate my clients. 'Cause I mean, I think you can definitely motivate without saying like absolute statements. And there's things that you can definitely, I think, encourage them. Like, I mean, if you exercise, you're going to gain muscle and hopefully lose fat. I don't know. I'm kind of rambling on and on, but
I heard this thing the other day about small victories.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Those can be super motivating.
For sure. Yeah. Like, for example, if you're a client and you have a certain goal I think I see this the most in my Silver Sneakers clients, but some of them will come in on the first day and they cannot do the squats, because a big indicator of health is being able to stand up out of a chair without using your hands. And
Silver Sneakers are your older
are my
group,
older
right?
Senior citizen clients. Yeah. And when I get to the point where they can do 60 squats per class, and that is really exciting. And I can tell, even if I don't like, I'll say something, but like I can just tell that is so motivating for them, the fact that they can do that now, even though it's like, obviously they're not going to be doing like a bodybuilding competition. I mean, not to say that they couldn't, but that's a really motivating thing. Also, I have to share this story. Sorry, I'm going on a tangent, but
this better be a really good story.
No, this
Maegan.
is good.
Okay.
Well, basically, if you fall as a senior citizen, that's an indicator that you probably have about a year left to live. One of my clients from my Silver Sneakers class, she started coming to my class and she had been falling all the time. Anyways, she just recently reached her 1 year mark of not falling at all. So
that's awesome.
That's my story. I told you it was good.
That was good. Yeah, and similarly, like I have a lot of students in my art academy who are beginning to enter art shows and get accepted into art shows.
Yeah.
And to start, maybe selling a piece or two in a group show. And then eventually they get to the point where they're doing a solo exhibit someplace. And that's super exciting to see. And I know that it's exciting for them too. So I think those small victories build on each other. Right?
Yeah, for sure.
Let's do some advertisements really fast.
Okay. So,
do you have anything you want to advertise, Maegan? We don't really have other advertisers, so we're just going to advertise our own stuff.
Yeah. So I have another podcast that I don't very regularly post on, but I am planning on posting more episodes once I finish my degree. But it's just called the Meg's Fitness Podcast, and you can follow me on Instagram at megs.fitness.
How do you spell Megs?
Oh yeah, so it's Maegs. So yeah, it's a little weird. Maegs Fitness.
Megs.fitness on Instagram?
Yep.
And do you have a separate Instagram account for your podcast?
I do, yeah. It's just Meg's Fitness Podcast. No periods or spaces.
Do you want to advertise your training or anything?
Yeah, so I'm a personal trainer. I've been doing it for over 5 years. So I do one-on-one training, and I do it in Payson. And then I also just teach fitness classes there. So if you ever are interested in personal training, feel free to DM me or reach out.
All right. Let's get back to the program. Okay, well, we've got one more sick burn in the publisher's preface here. It says, all who read, understand, and apply this philosophy will be better prepared to attract and enjoy these higher estates, which always have been and always will be denied to all except those who are ready for them. In other words, if you don't make progress, it's friggin' your fault.
That is manipulative, because it's like, it's that whole idea of like, well, if this isn't working, then it's your fault. You're not working hard enough.
Yeah. Yes. So look out for that, folks, out there in the world.
Yeah.
If that's built into the system,
Yeah.
it might be the system might be sus.
Might be, yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, let's move on to the author's preface. Did you have any notes about any of the introductions, Megan?
So something I should tell you guys is that I took notes on each chapter I read, and I came home and my dad had like extensive notes. So he has a lot more to say than I do, but I mean, the author's preface, that's like with the whole Andrew Carnegie thing, right? With like the secret.
Yes. So he says that there's a secret that was brought to his attention by Andrew Carnegie, and in some places, this was a meeting where he was invited as an adult to do this, but in this author's preface, he says, "I was just a boy when Andrew Carnegie carelessly tossed me this secret."
So it's like, that contradicts. That's a contradiction.
Well, it's just kind of as a. It feels like it's kind of a story that's building around this, right?
Yeah.
Which is, I think, just useful to think about. What are the stories that are built up in order, and we can build up our own stories, right? Like, well, I have a kind of my own origin story as an artist.
Yeah.
Right. And I resist embellishing it because I want it to be as truthful as possible. But
I never embellish.
You never do. Is that a quote from something?
No, I'm just saying that.
What were you going to say, Megan?
So are we talking about religion in this podcast, or is that off limits?
Oh, no, it's not off limits.
Well, I just wanted to bring up the fact that the story of Joseph Smith's first vision, there are like aren't there three conflicting accounts, 3 different accounts that have discrepancies? Yeah,
there's more than 3. There's multiple accounts, and yes, they say different things. And so apologists would, many times try to harmonize them. They try to make them say, well, we're gonna, when you retell something to different people, you're trying to tell them, bring out different things, different emphases based on your audience. but that's something to think about too, right?
Yeah.
Origin stories and the power of those stories.
Yeah. And this is something I think is interesting about my dad. We're gonna. He is very. I think he's a lot more harsh on gurus than he is on religion. Correct me if I'm wrong.
I don't think that's true.
Really? Okay.
I listen to so much religious
That's
stuff.
true, but it's also like he like immediately maybe discounts gurus, whereas he is not so quick. Well, maybe I'm just talking out of my butt, but
Maegan, we are not talking out of butts in this podcast. Okay, so I think I bring a similar skepticism to both. But I also am, and one of the reasons I'm doing this podcast again is to try to combat my own cynicism.
yeah.
And to try to find the good. So, right, like whether or not you think Joseph Smith saw angels or saw God and Jesus, for example, in a grove, literally, you can also derive good from the community of believers around you, right?
Yeah.
And one of the things that I believe in is looking at the sources and looking at what Joseph Smith, for example, said. He didn't say he had a visitation. He said he had a vision and that he wasn't even sure what was happening, whether he was in the body or like out of the body.
Yeah.
And so we've taken his words beyond what he actually said. But also we should analyze his words in the context that they were in if we're going to get the best, come to the best conclusions. And I don't know if we need to come to conclusions.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true.
But I don't know. I'm open to the possibility that I'm harsher on gurus than I am on religious figures.
I guess where I'm coming from is that you actively participate in religion. I mean, semi-actively. And obviously you are aware of the issues around church history. And then my mom texts us something that's like a video from Joe Dispenza. And my dad was like, do we know anything about this guy? And I was like, yeah, I actually have listened to a lot of his stuff. And like, he seems like a pretty good guy. And my dad goes, not according to what I've read in the past like few minutes that he heard his name.
That's not true. No, I had heard, like I said before,
yeah.
Some of my favorite podcasts are kind of picking apart these contemporary gurus. And so I had heard podcast episodes on Joe. But I'm open to the possibility that there's a lot of good things coming from Joe.
Yeah.
I have a neighbor that went to a big Joe Dispenza weekend and loved it.
Huh.
So.
Well, yeah. I guess, I've never heard any of the negative things, so maybe that will be the next topic we talk about.
We'll see if we can make it through this one.
I know. We need to we need to stop getting on side tangents.
Is there anything else you want to say about religion versus... Just that everybody should be aware that I'm harder on
gurus.
Contemporary gurus than I am on religious figures, and you're the opposite. Well, we could get into an argument, but I've gotten a lot more nuanced with it, I think. With religious
Yeah.
topics.
Yeah.
Interesting. Well,
I used to be like,
that'll be our next podcast.
Yeah. I used to be very cynical, but anyways, we can continue.
Okay. Do you have anything else you want to say about the intro?
Not about the intro. These are all about the chapters.
Let me just look at my notes here. The secret to which I refer, I'm quoting the author's preface now, has been mentioned no fewer than 100 times in this book. It has not been directly named, for it seems to work more successfully when it is merely uncovered and left in sight for those who are ready.
Yeah. I remember when I read this book the first time, that part made me so anxious because I was like, I just didn't feel like I was picking up on like a secret or something when I was reading it, but maybe I wasn't ready.
Exactly. That is kind of, I mean, okay, so on one hand, this is a device, both a literary device to keep you engaged in the book. Like, when am I going to find this secret?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And then it's another doubling down on, like, if you're not ready, then you're not going to find it and it's your fault.
Well, and it's also kind of like, yeah, and it's also kind of scary too, like, as a naive mind, because all it says about, like, this is the only way to get riches and personal success, and if you can't find it, then you're not ready.
Yeah. So you better get what you can out of this book, or
Yeah.
you're destined to a life of poverty.
Exactly, yeah.
On the other hand, it's not super far from what Jesus said when he taught in parables and was like, for those who can see, let them see, you know? I'm going to teach in parables so that, I'm trying to remember the exact scriptural words, but it's like, so that if you're deaf to it, you won't hear it. But basically, those who have eyes can see it, or those who have ears can hear it.
Okay.
So I find just like a slight parallel there.
Yeah, I can see that.
So anyway, that's something to think about. All right. Well, he talks about I don't know, just a little bit more hyperbole here. A peculiar thing about The Secret is that once you get it, people who get it will never again submit to failure.
That is a bold statement.
Pretty bold. Pretty bold. Okay, then he says, I analyzed hundreds of well-known men, and he lists a bunch of super famous wealthy people from the industrial era. And it almost implies their endorsement of his book. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Without actually, like, he's like, well, Andrew Carnegie sent me on this quest and told me to study the lives of 500 successful people, men. And then, I mean, certainly this was another era, and we could get into the whole, dynamics of,
Yeah. Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, it reminds me of, like, well, I think I'm going to butcher this, but, like, how, like, I saw this post one time that was like, this is how you achieve success. And it's basically like, you call, like, President Obama and you say, like, can my son or can my daughter work for you? She's married to, like, Elon Musk. And then you, like, call Elon Musk and you say, hey, can you marry my daughter because she works for Obama or something? I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, it totally it's interesting because so many people, like, if you go on X, which was formerly known as Twitter,
Yeah.
you see people just really trying to get into, first of all, shocking people.
Yeah.
So that they can get more
engagement.
So engagement farming. And then the other thing is just like, there's a lot of pandering
Name dropping
to gurus and stuff, and tagging them, and just in order to almost imply association.
Yeah.
So it's not a new thing. It's just being done in different ways, I think.
That's true. It's like, it's almost like social media, like, association with excuse me, association with people who have lots of followers, but like before social media.
Yeah. Well, okay, the very last thing in the preface, is this the preface or the introduction? There's like 5 prefaces, and then there chapter
I know,
1
there's
is an
so
introduction.
many before it starts.
Anyway, and this is something that I really like, and I cannot understate, or I cannot overstate how much I like this idea. All achievement, all earned riches have their beginning in an idea.
Yeah.
I love that. I love, and the religious equivalent, I think, to that would be, for example, in Mormonism, there's this idea of the spiritual creation before physical creation.
Yeah.
And that's what this is getting at to me. All achievement, all earned riches have their beginning in an idea.
Yeah. And it reminds me, I would say maybe that this like kind of spiritual but not religious equivalent to that is like the law of attraction or the law of positivity, or I mean obviously manifestation. But I am the biggest believer in the law of positivity and attraction. So
what does that mean? What is the law of positivity?
I mean, I feel like a kind of like a fraud because I don't know how to explain it like logically, but like I just think that the energy that you put out in the world will come back to you. So like if you are putting out positive energy, good vibes, I know this sounds like so like like hippie like nonsense or something, but
is
that not PC to say?
I'm trying to no, what do I want to say? Just, this is helping me with my cynicism.
Okay.
To hear your ideas about the law of attraction.
Yeah, I just feel like I've been in like places where my mental state has like literally affected the things that happen to me. Like being in a bad mental state has, and I might be cuckoo, but it literally affects the things that happen to me in my environment. And when I'm thinking positive, doing my affirmations, like going out of my way to like serve people or do things for people, I swear good things just happen to me. And I just believe that with all my heart.
Okay. Well, we're going to talk a lot about affirmations in the
coming
chapters.
We are. Right? It's true.
But before we get to chapter 1, and we'll end this first episode on this note. Napoleon Hill tells us that after having just told us that all achievement has its beginning in idea, he says, you already have half of it. Therefore, you will readily recognize the other half the moment it reaches your mind.
So wait, sorry. So you already have half of it. Does that mean the idea? Like you already have the idea?
That's a good question. Well, he says, here's the whole sentence. If you are ready for the secret, you already possess one half of it.
Oh.
So you got half of the secret already.
Okay, I see. So if you're ready for it, you already have half of it.
And you'll recognize the other half the moment it reaches your mind, but only if you're ready.
Okay.
So I really hope that as we read this...
I hope we're ready.
I hope we're ready. I hope we get the other half of the secret.
Yeah.
Okay.
So tune in for episode 2 to find out if we find out more of the secret.
Yep. All right. Thanks for doing this with me, Megan.
Awesome. Thanks for listening.